Hello, I'm Robert, voluntary fact checker and helping you if you're scared of many things. And this is to help you if you're scared about all these things that's in the news about Greenland. And I've checked Associated Press, BBC, France 24, NBC, PBS. I've checked all over the place. And nobody's saying a very basic point, which is that there's no way that Trump can take Greenland in any way whatsoever. He can't get from where he is now to a situation where Greenland becomes part of the United States, even under US law, never mind recognised by other countries, if the Greenlanders don't consent and don't want it. It simply can't do it. So I'll start with why you can't do it by coercion. So let's look at that first. So this is I found in a diplomacy and law blog of legal experts. Then this made this conclusion, but this is not in the mainstream news. You have to hunt around to find specialist experts saying this. And he said, when these doctrines are applied cumulatively, and they talked about all the various ways he might try to do it, the legal position becomes clear. Acquisition of Greenland by force is unequivocally unlawful, and acquisition by treaty is legally precarious and likely void if tainted by coercion. The only pathway consistent with international law involves Greenland first exercising its right to independence and only thereafter deciding as a sovereign entity on the nature of its external relationships. And in that case, Greenland as a sovereign entity would want to be part of the EU. That's very clear. They would not want to be part of the United States. They would want to continue to have free trade with Denmark and to have a free travel area through the EU. That's very, very clear. So there's no way it's going to happen. So now let's look a little bit more at this, about the whole thing about coercion, which is what Trump is trying to do. Right now, he's saying, look, you've got to give us Greenland or we'll withdraw from NATO. And if he did anything but like that, first of all, he tries to coerce the Prime Minister of Denmark or the Prime Minister of Greenland or both, and says, you've got to sign this treaty or else, whatever it is. Then the treaty has no legal effect under the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. And similarly, if he coerces a state by threat or use of force, says, look, I'm going to invade Greenland, which he has been doing. He's saying, look, if you don't give me Greenland, I'll attack it, I'll invade it, I'll take it over with the military. Any treaty obtained in that way is also completely void. So, and now that is under international law, but it's also under the law of the United States, because this is under the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2. All treaties made, which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. So that Vienna Convention is the supreme law of the land in the United States. So if someone then challenges, so Trump managed somehow to coerce Denmark and Greenland into signing a treaty with him. He then says, okay, I'm going to declare Greenland is a new state. We're going to go over there. We're going to take away all their Danish passports and make sure that, and say they've got to have United States passports or whatever it is he does. Then the people will take him to the courts in the United States, and the courts will just say to him, your treaty is not valid because of the Vienna Convention, which is the law of the land in the United States. So even the United States would not be able to recognize Greenland as part of the United States if Trump was to coerce it into signing a treaty. Not even the United States itself could recognize that Greenland was part of the United States. And nobody's mentioned it. You have to really hunt away to find a very obscure blog. At least it's, very few people have found that blog, I would think, that legal analysis. And, not the blog isn't obscure. I mean, what is it, the diplomacy and law. Let's bring up that post. Copy. bring it up and you can see. So that's the diplomacy and law, yes, consent. And this goes all the way through, and then when you get to the end of it, so you can click through and have a read of that, and then that's the conclusion I was reading about. The central legal conclusion is not ambiguous. Acquisition by force is unequivocally unlawful and incapable of producing a valid title. Acquisition is equally untenable if it bypasses Greenlander's freelance expressed will or is tainted by coercion. And it would be both of those. Because the Greenlanders would be protesting every day. Find there's only about 8% of the Greenlanders who got a United States passport. So, and then there's also, I found out that bit about coerced treaties only recently, and then this was what I found out earlier, which is that also, well, I already knew this, and I just, in case of checking it, that if Trump was to give an order to a general, and so the thing is that Greenland, this is the Greenland Parliament, and it's got no military defences. The United States, it was actually when the Nazis took over Denmark in World War II, in 1941 I think it was, then the ambassador of Denmark in the United States, on behalf of the King of Denmark, but this was, he took it on himself as an ambassador to, just by himself, because he couldn't, the king was, couldn't do it because he was under Nazi occupation. Then he said on behalf of the King of Denmark that he was, that he asked the United States to protect Greenland from the Nazis. And the United States did that. And it's been under the United States protection ever since. It was a very important part in World War II that the Allies had control of Greenland. It was really quite significant a factor in the World War II that they had control of Greenland. So that is the history behind it. And the United States has been there ever since. And it's been protecting Greenland from, it's been charged with protecting Greenland, with the Danes are also involved as well. And so if the United States was to try to invade Greenland, there's nobody there who can hit with military strikes. There's some sled teams, very important, dog sled teams. It's the only way that the military can keep an eye on Greenland at this time of year. In the far north of Greenland, you can't, there's no fuel depots, there's no roads there. The only way you can get around is on dog sleds. And this is the world's only elite military dog sled team, which is run by the Danes. And so the United States collaborate with the Danes. But they're not going to be firing missiles at the dog sled team. I mean, that's ridiculous. So there's nothing
5 a.m.
Oh, don't worry about that. That's just my thing that tells me the time from time to time. So so there's nothing there for the United States to target with missiles except its own military base, which obviously is not going to do. The Greenlanders, they don't have a military. They've got they have rifles. They are a little bit like the United States, that they have a very permissive gun law, but they're not going to be fighting the US soldiers in the streets of Greenland. They're just going to be protesting, and every day they'd be out protesting if the United States was to try to take over Greenland. And then, so suppose this ridiculous scenario, this fantastical scenario, that Trump orders a general to take over Greenland. Well, military, that's a cinch. They've got 150 Marines there. They probably need to expand that maybe to 1,000 Marines, and send a handful of them to each village, and then a few hundred of them to Nuuk, the capital of Greenland, and they'll be in charge of Greenland. and there'd be nothing the Greenlanders could do about it except protest. And they presumably wouldn't suppress the protests, so there'd be protests out every day, and just marching down the street saying, United States out, we don't want to be part of the United States, etc. Well, suppose all that happened, and suppose the CIA, well, I've already talked about how it wouldn't be a valid declaration if they coerced it, so it would just be de facto or in charge of Greenland, and that could Trump even stay in de facto in control of Greenland, just in occupying it, and not actually legally part of the United States at all. He couldn't do that either, because this is because, again, by that supremacy clause that in Article 6, Clause 2 of the US Constitution, then this is completely illegal in US law. And all the general taking part, and it's the way that the law of war works, that even a soldier taking part in this operation, who has he's marching through the streets holding his gun or whatever, and just to do that, this is something that is so clearly unlawful that he's expected to be able to know that this can't be legal, to be marching around in Greenland suppressing the population. So it's a different level depending where you are in the hierarchy. If you're a general, you've got your judge advocate general to advise you. You've got legal advice, and you're expected to know all the intricacies of it. If you're just an ordinary soldier, then you're supposed to have a basic idea of how the law of war works. But even a basic soldier would be expected to know that this can't be legal, to be suppressing the population of Greenland. So they all end up in the courts in the United States. They'll all be prosecuted under criminal charges. And you have to 1,000 soldiers, that'd be 1,000 cases going through the US courts pretty quickly after he made this order. And that's why it's not going to happen. The general would refuse, or he'd end up in prison for the rest of his life. Or probably, and some very long sentence anyway. And the soldiers, they'd know, or they'd quickly find out, talking to each other, this can't be legal. And someone would say, well, we talked to a judge, and we talked to I've got a legal friend or whatever. They'd know very quickly that this is not legal, and they mustn't obey this order, because they won't want to be taken to court. And I suppose that, just again, very daft thing, but just to look at all possibilities, suppose that Trump was to say to the general, go ahead and do it anyway, I know it's illegal, but I promise that I will pardon you if you do this. So then you have these 1,000 soldiers in Greenland, and the general and the officers, and he's promised to pardon them all. And then you've got so in principle, on paper, you think that this could work, that they all go off to Greenland, they take over Greenland de facto. It's not going to be part of the United States, but they just say, oh, well, Trump wants us to do this anyway, and he's going to pardon us all. Then the United States population is not going to stand for that, and legislatures aren't going to stand for that. And they can say, look, what are you doing, Trump? You're going around suppressing a democracy with soldiers marching around the streets. And they'd have to have soldiers in front of Parliament, preventing the Parliament from meeting. They'd have to have soldiers at the docks that would stop all the goods coming in from Denmark, and making sure they pay tariffs. They'd have to have soldiers taking taxes from the civilians, from the Greenlanders. They'd have to go around taking away passports and replacing them with other passports, all sorts of things. And I think it's pretty clear what would happen next after that, which is that Trump would be very swiftly impeached. There's no way that just because the representatives in the Republican representatives would know that if they don't impeach Trump, then they're not going to be re-elected for taking part in such a very clearly illegal operation, and completely against democratic principles, which are so important to the American people. So, and any self-respecting Republican would not approve this for a moment. So so this is just, it's just not going to happen. So then I just want to talk a little bit about some other things. I go into a lot of detail here. I don't want, and this is by the way, Representative Lear, who serves as a Judge Advocate General, and he said that if any military member, including generals, on down to enlisted members, if any of them participate in the use of military force against Greenland without congressional authorization, they're following illegal orders. That's simply a fact. And so that was just what I was explaining, and what you got there. And they would all end up in criminal charges against them, as well as probably a court-martial as well, and dishonourable discharge and all those things. So that's not going to happen. And now, if we're going to look through some of the rest of this, first of all, if you look around, and Marco Rubio says Trump's real aim is to buy Greenland, and the threats are to further that goal. Well, as I said, a threat to buy Greenland will invalidate it. It's not going to be a valid purchase if it's done under threat. And then, but there's another thing. If they really do want to buy Greenland, why haven't they started negotiations after an entire year of threats? So the Prime Minister of Denmark and the Prime Minister of Greenland, they've been trying to get a meeting with Marco Rubio. They last got a meeting last Thursday, and that's the first time since the beginning of Trump's inauguration day. That's the first time they've been able to talk to them. This is not credible if this is really all about the United States wanting access to the minerals. The United States could have started negotiations with mining minerals beginning as soon as Trump took office. That's clearly not what he's interested in. And then the other thing is, he claims it's about security, but Greenland is, well, it's very inaccessible. Famously, they only send one cargo, they sent one shipment, which is of oil and a cargo vessel and an icebreaker, and they send those to their military port in Greenland once a year. They sent the last shipment in July, and the only named thing in that shipment was new furnishings for the accommodations in the port, in the base. So they've only got 150 soldiers. They're not expanding it. They haven't sent new soldiers. There were far more soldiers previously than there are now. There's no doubt at all that Denmark would be absolutely happy with them building an entire new base there, or whatever it is they wanted. It's clear that's not what they want. So why would he threaten Greenland? I mean, one possibility is that people in the United States, they don't have a clue about how people in Denmark think. So they would not realize how important, for instance, it is universal what would you call it, universal public health. And that's what you have in Greenland. It's paid for by tax. Everyone in their taxes pays, as part of their taxes, pays for everyone to have access to healthcare, irrespective of their income. And they do not want to give that up. They speak Danish. They're not. Their main language is Danish and then Icelandic. They're not English speaking as their main language. They have strong connections with Greenland. There's a very large community of Icelandic people in Greenlanders. Sorry, not Iceland. Very large community of Greenlanders in Denmark. They go to university in Denmark. They are used to the EU travel area. They have trade with the EU without any taxes, without any export duties or without any export duties or anything like that. So they would want to be part of the EU if they were independent. If they got in, Greenlanders do want to be independent from Denmark. they want to make, and then they would want to belong to NATO, and they would want to belong to EU. They would also want to belong to the EU for its shared security thing, same as for NATO. And they would not want to be part of the United States, even in a compact of free trade, even a very loose arrangement like Marshall Islands. They simply wouldn't want that. Well, that's the Greenland situation. And polls show very clearly they have absolutely no interest in being part of the United States, and they would never want it. And it's a bit like, to try and understand that perspective, imagine you're in, say, Vermont, and you have an option to become part of the EU. And then if you do that, you'll be able to travel anywhere through the EU. You can use the EU. You will have part of the EU travel area, but you'll lose your American passport, and you won't be able to travel anywhere in the United States without having to take out a visa. Would you want to join the EU? And the answer is no. In the same way, Greenland wouldn't want to join the United States. So very simple. So, but Trump may well not know that. So he might just sort of say, well, I'm sure that once they've thought it through, they will want to join the United States. So it's a possibility that he's thinking, oh, it'd be a bit of a feather in his cap that they would eventually want to join the United States. And this has been an ongoing thing for quite a while, that people just in America seem to think that Greenlanders would want to become part of America. And they just don't seem to have a very good idea of the Greenlandic perspective. So it might be that. And then it might just be a distraction. So Trump, I don't think Trump is someone who wants power, really. I think he just wants attention. So, he wants to distract away from numerous things that are going wrong in the United States, both domestically, all these things to do with ICE, and the things to do with laws he wants to pass not getting through Congress, likely another lockdown coming, another, government shutdown coming in at the end of January, the various things that have been, the Epstein files, that, not that he's in any way implicated, but it's not a very good look for him, and just all these other things. It may just be that he just wants a distraction, and that's all this is about. It's just a nice big distraction, and also just that I think he likes being on the papers and just being at the top of the masthead of the news and on the front page of the news every day. And I think he may like that as well. It's whatever his motivation, I don't think it can possibly be anything to do with security, because he'd have done something about that by now. It can't be anything to do with minerals deal, because he would have done something about that by now. I don't think he could ever, I don't think he really believes that he could achieve a coerced treaty. I mean, surely he's got legal advisors who tell him that a coerced treaty would not be valid and so on. And he's far more careful than people think with the Venezuela. So he's managed to develop a kind of reputation of being impulsive and someone who just makes decisions on the spur of the moment. But he isn't really. So certainly not in military things. All his military actions have been careful and considered. And if you look at the Venezuela military action, then the CIA sent their first operatives into Venezuela in the middle of, towards the end of August. That means that Trump had made the decision before then that they were going to abduct Maduro. So during all that time since then, when he sent that destroyer, when he sent the aircraft carrier and gradually accumulated things there, during all that time, Trump knew that the end game was that at some point he was going to order that Maduro was abducted. They'd built a copy of Maduro's house, and they were practicing assaulting it during those months. And they had spies in Venezuela preparing the ground for months. And during all that time, Trump knew that. He didn't say a peep about it. So he is someone, he is capable of, he does plan ahead. Despite all the claims that he doesn't, he obviously does. And so he would have got other people to work through, if can we get from here to owning Greenland? And they would just tell him no. So he likely knows what I've just explained. So based on all that, then the only thing that I'm left with as a reason is a distraction, and just possibly, maybe, vaguely, the idea that maybe the Greenlanders would like to join the United States if he just makes enough of a fuss about it. But if it's any hint of coercion, then that wouldn't be valid anyway. So anyway, so hopefully that helps you to be rather less, hopefully not scared at all about this. I'm not for a moment scared. I know he's not going to do this. And it's just, for some reason, the mainstream media do very little by way of fact-checking anymore. And simply, I think maybe they just don't have the time, maybe it costs more, I don't know, for whatever reason. And they're just not checking things like this. They just they take a very lazy, easy way out and just run the story as it is, what Trump says, what the politician says, and leave it at that. And they don't go into the background like this. So hopefully, now that you understand the background better, that you can now see and agree that there's no way that Trump is going to in any way attack Greenland or in any way end up in a situation. Greenland is at the end of Trump's presidency on 20th of January 2029 at noon, Greenland will still be part of Denmark. Or if it has become independent, then by then, but it's not like that's a little bit too quickly. It'll probably be a few years more than that before Greenland eventually does become independent. But if it is independent, it'll be seeking to join the EU and NATO, not the United States. And so I think we can be very, extremely confident that Greenland is not going to be part of the United States. It might eventually be an independent nation that becomes part of the EU and an independent country in NATO, like Iceland. Iceland used to be part of Denmark originally, and it's an independent country. It's got no military of its own. It's under the NATO shield. It would be very similar with Greenland. It would be a country that's got no military of its own, but it's protected by NATO, just like Iceland is, which Iceland has got no military whatsoever, no conscription, no soldiers. It's just not got the military at all, and it's kind of advertisement to the world that NATO, about how NATO is a country that embraces and recognises and accepts countries that have got no capability of defending themselves. And NATO does not exclude you from membership if you have no military. So they're quite good adverts for NATO, and both Iceland and eventually if Greenland leaves Denmark and becomes part of NATO, completely defenseless country that NATO is protecting. And so anyway, so hopefully that helps you to understand this a fair bit better. I'll put a link to this in the video description, and if you look at the end of this, that's about how to contact and about how to debunk. We've got now our new debunk forum, and I make the hot topics in the Doomsday Debunk forum. It's a new policy. If it's a hot topic, I make it into a blog post like this one, and I plan to do quite a few more of these as time goes on. That's a kind of reference point for, so you don't need to be looking at all the scary questions on the forum. You can just go to my blog here and you see some of the main points. Do say if you've got any requests for something you want me to do a blog post about.